Hi and welcome back to my video recipe series where I'm baking something inspired by the gods and goddesses of the Olympus. Today we're baking something for the god of wine, festivity and madness, Dionysos. Should I say Dionysus? I don't know, I'm sorry if it sounds unusual to you guys, but I'm gonna say what I'm used to, if that's okay. So Dionysos it is. So, while some stories say that Dionysos was actually born as a demigod who has been killed and then born again by Zeus's thigh, he is still commonly seen as an official member of the 12 Olympian gods and goddesses. Often depicted as a young man with grapevines, wine, fennel, and ivy around him, he is associated not only with wine and partying, but is also a vegetation deity who is also deeply connected to grape harvesting, orchards, and various fruits. He is also associated with the transition period from summer to fall, so it felt perfect to do this video now in September. His worshippers often appeared in cult-like formations who celebrated huge festivals and religious rituals in honor of Dionysus. And because he himself was the god of joy and festivities, he was believed to be rather close to his worshippers and actually joining their parties and sometimes, under the influence of wine, possessing them. He was also connected to satyrs and bulls, and his cults were not only known for parties and wine, but also especially linked to theaters, art, and literature. Dionysos had the power to inspire creativity and enthusiasm, or even ecstasy, which could then also turn into rage and madness. So, pretty much all the emotions. So, that's that for the little trivia bit of this video. Now let's get to my concept sketch. So, because as a god of grape harvest and winemaking, I had to do some kind of alcoholic wine-induced cake. So I therefore planned to do some kind of chocolate red wine cake because, well, obviously had to include red wine, and also I found that chocolate as a very rich and indulgent ingredient would fit perfectly with Dionysos' link to joy and ecstasy. With Dionysos being associated with chaos, partying, and insanity, I also felt incredibly chill this time around because after being so perfectionistic with Artemis last month, I thought I could really just vibe and be a little messy with the god of madness and chaos here. To further emphasize that messiness, I also plan to do a creamy wine or grape juice frosting, as well as a drippy and rich chocolate ganache on top of the cake. For his connection to fruits and harvest, I also wanted to include some fruit decorations, especially figs and grapes, and also some slightly bitter cocoa nibs, which could refer to the rawness of the cults or refined taste of alcoholic beverages like wine. Of course, Go Glitter is back in town, no one's surprised, right? So, yeah, these were my ideas for Dionysos. Now let's see what chaotic creation I whipped up here. So originally I wanted to include the wine in this recipe not only in the cake itself but also to color the frosting. The wine I used was this organic vegan red wine, but while testing the frosting out I realized that I'm not really the biggest fan of how intense you could taste it, so I found these cute kids juice boxes with grape juice and used that instead. However, I started off making the chocolate cake first, and for that I combined flour, cocoa powder, baking powder, salt, some cinnamon, vanilla, and coconut sugar and mixed it together in a bowl. Oh, and you can of course swap the coconut sugar for regular sugar if you want to. I then added my wet ingredients, with them being neutral rapeseed oil, plant milk, the actual wet wine, but like I said, also grape juice would work, and maple syrup. Mix that together until you get a smooth batter and ideally prepare 2 cake tins. But if you only have one, then you can bake all of it in one batch too. Meanwhile, I also preheated the oven to 180 degrees and used it to melt some coconut oil in there, which we will need for the frosting later, as well as greasing the cake tins for some extra non-stick safety. Then fill half the batter each into the 2 tins and bake them for about 35 minutes or until a toothpick comes out clean. Next up is the frosting, so add natural smooth cashew butter, vegan yogurt and liquid sweetener to a bowl. I was using maple syrup, but maybe a light colored sweetener would have been even better for the colors, so keep that in mind. I also added vanilla and this time the grape juice. So now it already started to get messy because the color of the grape juice wasn't strong enough to color the frosting like it did with the wine. So I had to improvise and use some stuff I had left in my kitchen to achieve the light pink purplish color. Anyway, once you mix all of the ingredients together, add your melted coconut oil, mix again and set the frosting base into the fridge to set. This will take at least 1 to 2 hours in my experience. Now, when the cakes are done, remove them from the tins carefully and let them cool completely before baking. This is important, otherwise your frosting will melt. When your frosting is cool enough, you'll be able to whip it up once again until thick and fluffy. Then place it back into the fridge until you're ready to assemble the cake, and optionally whip it up again before using. For the chocolate ganache, I melted some vegan dark chocolate first and then added plant milk and red wine while stirring frequently so that both the chocolate and the liquids started to mix and became this very thick, chocolatey sauce kind of consistency. I also added a tablespoon of liquid sweetener, but that's totally optional. I then prepared my decorations for the cake, which were these luscious figs, which I cut into quarters, as well as some blackberries I spontaneously got that day and thought they fitted the vibe and color scheme. Oh, and I washed some grapes, but I don't have any footage for some reason. And here we are, ready to assemble the dionysos cake. So I of course started with a chocolate base. By the way, if you want this cake to be a bit more stable and neat, I suggest you first cut the cake bases horizontally to even them out. If you're not doing this, things can get messy, as you'll see later in the video. Then comes the second chocolate cake layer, followed by the rich chocolate ganache kind of sauce. I also tried to make it drip down the sides on purpose and then added my decorations on top. This big grapevine seemed perfect, so I placed it right in the center and arranged the figs and blackberries around it. And the cocoa nibs, and of course the edible gold glitter. And here it is, the chocolate red wine cake for the dionysos. I actually really liked how it turned out. I love opulent fruit decoration on cakes anyway, so the grapevine and the figs on top of the chocolate ganache were 100% the style route I wanted to go down. I mean, it was a bit messy and cutting it was also kind of a struggle, but honestly, that's exactly the vibe I was going for, so I was pretty okay with that. And here's a proud me with my little chaos cake. And a taste test, of course. The taste also was pretty good. You could taste the red wine a little bit in the cake, but it complemented the chocolate really well, and because I used grape juice for the frosting, it wasn't too much for me this time either. So I don't know if it was a trend or anything, but on my TikTok For You page there were a lot of girls having picnics and cutting their cake with wine glasses recently. And of course I thought that would be 1000% perfect for the Dionysos video. So I wanted to try it, even though the concept of ruining a perfectly cute cake instead of just cutting pretty pieces from it wasn't fully making sense to me, but oh well, I still wanted to try it. And it all went well, until it didn't. Oh my god! So yeah, that happened, I guess. I was close to freaking out, not gonna lie. But then I honestly just laughed and embraced it. I don't know. Maybe it was the spirit of Dionysos possessing me or the cake. Who knows? I definitely was under the influence of some wine at that point. And of course, I also saved the cake. I mean, it didn't fall on the floor, and I'm not the person to throw out a perfectly fine cake. So yeah, cake was rescued, chaos was induced, and wine was drunk. And that concludes my video for Dionysos. I hope you liked it, and see you next month. Bye!